The Mo Chara of the Belfast rap group Kneecap arrived to a London court today to face a terrorism charge. He's accused of alleged support for the militant group Hezbollah, and he was granted unconditional bail with this case adjourned until August. The 27-year-old, whose stage name is Mo Chara, arrived to court surrounded by fellow band members as well as a sea of supporters. Afterwards, the group's manager, Daniel Lambert, gave us his reaction.
This entire thing was rushed to serve a political agenda, so I think it's a good day. A good day for Kneecap. It was particularly heartwarming and kind of nice just to see the amount of people outside that court, the different types of people, the different groups who came, political groups based in England, but also Irish groups, Palestinian groups, people from all backgrounds, people who oppose genocide and see this for what it is. So it was a very unusual day, but I think it was a good day. It's very clear to us, it has been since the start, this was a political agenda being driven initially by the US, being served and executed by the British administration, British government, to shut down, attempt to shut down Kneecap, and they're going to fail in that. Since the first time, I met them and became manager 6-7 years ago, they always spoke about Palestine, and they spoke about it not as something that they chose, something that was inherent in who they were, in terms of where they grew up. Like, they know what occupation is. They're much closer to it, I suppose. Like, as someone from Dublin myself, I think that we have this inherent awareness of colonialism and occupation and what it can do, and obviously our kind of history with famine, and it wasn't, it was obviously food left the country. But I think for people in the north, it's much closer, and for them, this was something that and is something that just they feel this massive connection to, and they feel that they have an obligation to use what are increasingly bigger and bigger platforms. And they've always done that without any fear whatsoever of the impact it may have. We were told explicitly by people in the US, if you want to go to the Oscars, stop speaking about Palestine. And the lads laughed at that. They just laughed at it and said, what do we want, an Oscar, and to shut up? So they're a huge credit as people that they put this issue before their own careers, before their own finances. And it's something that I think people should have pride in them. In Ireland, I think that people should be proud of them. I just feel a great sense of pride whenever I see them say those things around the world.
Yes, Daniel Lambert speaking to us a little bit earlier after the case was adjourned. Senator Robbie Gallagher still with me. Senator, do you agree with them? Should we all be proud of them?
I have to say that they're a hugely successful group, Kieran, and they're good at what they do, and they have a huge fan base, and to that I say well done, and good luck to them in that regard. I suppose it's a case of when you do get to a certain level and you do allegedly post stuff online during a concert or whatever, that there's certain responsibility that comes with that fame. And free speech is important, but the content of that speech is even more important. And I was taken the day by one fan, a lady named Miss Kennedy, I think, from Austria, that travelled over to the UK today for the trial to show their support. And she said that and I nearly quote here, that they need to be aware of the social responsibility they have, and that this is not just about music, it's about much more than this. And I felt her comments, her being a supporter, were very apt and definitely had a note with me. So I would say they're young lads, they're hugely successful, and I take my hat off to them, and I wish them continued success in what they do. But I suppose, like us all, every day is a school day, and perhaps with the benefit of reflection moving forward, perhaps they might be more careful in the language that they're using. They allegedly talked support for Hezbollah and Hamas, and even mentioned allegedly death to MPs. And I think one daughter of an MP who was assassinated there recently was very upset. As
David Ames's daughter.
Yes,
I think, in fairness to Kneecap, that they acknowledged that in a statement. You know what I mean? The insensitivity of that particular statement about kill your MP. When it comes to the charge of political policing, I know maybe Daniel Lambert touched on it there. There'll be others who say, listen, the police's hands are tied. If a complaint is made, they have to investigate it, and if they feel there's evidence there, regardless of politics, a charge has to be brought. Certainly, politics has inserted itself into the case in the UK. You see politicians jumping all over this, particularly politicians of a certain hue, Tory politicians and Reform politicians, take a very, very dim view of this. I mean, trying to suck Kneecap into the culture wars, really. I mean, they'd be better off staying out, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. And I would say, if you were to have a conversation with them today, and even their manager, Daniel, I would say, if they could play it all over again, would they say what they've alleged to have said? I wonder. I suppose as far as the UK authorities are concerned, as you outlined correctly, a complaint was made and they're duly bound to investigate that complaint, and whatever will happen through the courts will happen. I think there's learnings there from them. I certainly wish them nothing but success. They're hugely positive. They've a huge fan base. They appeal to a certain cohort. They're good at what they do. They're excellent at what they do, hugely successful. They're in the business to get their name out there, and I suppose their name is out there now maybe better than it ever was heretofore. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. But I would say there are lessons to be learned there, and as I say, if we all could play the record again, sometimes Kieran would play it. And I would say if they looked into their hearts, and if they were saying, would you do it all over again next week? I think maybe the answer would be...
Do you worry, as some do, that they present an overly simplistic view of recent Irish history, of the Troubles in particular? Absolutely, yeah. I certainly wouldn't concur with the messaging that they're portraying and that Daniel discussed in his. I think that's very simplistic, and one thing we've learned about Northern Ireland down through the years, it's been a very complex problem, and there's no simple narrative on it, and certainly the narrative that the lads would be portraying, and again through the manager here today, I certainly wouldn't be in agreement with. And I mean, do you... The nature of your worry is what? Is that there's maybe a young generation who grew up and then subscribe to that narrative? I think it's a very simplistic narrative. Who don't have first-hand memory of it. Absolutely, yeah. But I think young people are very intelligent, and they're well fit to make up their own minds now, and they can look at history and read history and look at the events that happened and make their own minds up at the end of the day. I think these lads' future really and truly is in music, and they're excellent at what they do in that. And if, not that they'll probably ask me for advice, Kieran, never will, but if they did, I'd be saying to them, listen, lads, concentrate on what you're good at. By all means, be a voice for what's going on in Gaza and the wrongs that's going on out there, but perhaps be a little bit more careful in the language that they use. All right. Well, they know where to find you anyway if they're looking for advice from you.